The Portuguese conquest of Banda Orient, which occurred in the early 16th century, was a significant event in the history of Indonesia. The conquest was a result of the Portuguese search for spices, particularly nutmeg and mace, which were highly prized in Europe at the time. Banda Orient, also known as the Spice Islands, was a group of islands located in the eastern part of Indonesia. These islands were the only places in the world where nutmeg and mace were produced, making them extremely valuable to European traders. The Portuguese, who had already established a presence in the Indian Ocean, were eager to gain control of the spice trade in the region. In 1511, they successfully conquered Malacca, a strategic port city on the Malay Peninsula. This allowed them to control the trade routes between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. In 1512, the Portuguese sent a fleet of ships led by Antonio de Abreu to explore the Spice Islands. Abreu arrived in Banda Orient and established friendly relations with the local rulers. However, the Portuguese soon realized that the local rulers were not willing to give them exclusive trading rights to nutmeg and mace. In 1513, the Portuguese sent a larger expedition to Banda Orient, led by Francisco Serrao. Serrao managed to establish a permanent Portuguese presence on the islands by building a fort and a trading post. He also forged alliances with some of the local rulers, who agreed to sell nutmeg and mace exclusively to the Portuguese. Over the next few decades, the Portuguese maintained their control over the Spice Islands through a combination of military force and diplomacy. They built more forts and trading posts, and established a monopoly over the nutmeg and mace trade. However, the Portuguese were not the only European power interested in the Spice Islands. The Dutch, who had established a presence in the region in the late 16th century, also coveted the nutmeg and mace trade. In 1621, the Dutch launched a military campaign to drive the Portuguese out of the Spice Islands. The Portuguese were outnumbered and outgunned, and they were forced to surrender. The Dutch took control of the Spice Islands and established the Dutch East India Company, which became one of the most powerful and profitable companies in history. The Portuguese conquest of Banda Orient was a significant event in the history of Indonesia and the world. It marked the beginning of European colonization of the region and had a profound impact on the local population and their way of life. The conquest also had far-reaching economic and political consequences, as it contributed to the rise of the Dutch East India Company and the emergence of the Dutch as a major colonial power.